Back into Genesis again this evening. I finished chapter 9 last week, but I am not going to go through chapter 10. We covered a great deal of that in chapter 9. I'm going to give you a quick capsule of what's very, very important in chapter 10. Follow Shem up to Abram. That's the line. From Adam to Noah, from Noah to Shem, Shem to Abram. Because now we are focusing on a different direction now. So we're coming off the ark here in chapter 11 of Genesis tonight. We're off the ark, and the command is, of course, what? To go into the world and repopulate. And this section explains how the nations came to be scattered across the face of the ancient world. It's a message of judgment. What they prided themselves in became their downfall, and what they feared the most came upon them. Proverbs 10:24 says this, "The fear of the wicked, it shall come upon them." He must have had these people at Babel in mind when he wrote that. So the account here that we're going to be looking at, it's opposing parallelism. Nice term, isn't it? But everything that mankind proposed in the first half, these first few verses, was disposed of in the second, beginning at verse 5. Almost an undoing or a reversal of all their activity, even to the extent of parallel expressions. The narrative hinges on a central point or a central fact. In verse 5, we'll see it says, "And the Lord came down." And we'll talk about more of that in just a minute. Now, one of the problems in this passage is this connection back to chapter 10, which we didn't go through in detail because of what we talked about earlier. At the beginning of chapter 11, the whole world speaks one language and one vocabulary. In chapter 10, we see that it's already divided the nations according to peoples and tongues. Territories, clans, nations, languages, etc. occurs 3 times, and though it's not always in the same order. Probably the first 9 verses explain to us how the arrangements of chapter 10 came about. Genesis often goes outside of chronological order to arrange the material that's it's not always chronological, just like we see in the prophets. We see in Revelation. Everything is not step by step, but it explains what's going on. The exact chronology is only hinted at the expression about Peleg. In his time, the earth was divided in 1025 there. So with that in mind, don't let people jump in and say, well, they already had a language in 10. Well, 10 is giving us a direction. It's a map. It's a map to lead us to Abram. That's what it's about. It's telling us how everybody ended up where they were, but then we end up with Abram here coming up. So as we start in chapter 11, verse 1 and following, read the first 4 verses. "And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." Well, instead of doing what God had told them, to scatter throughout the earth, repopulate, they ended up on the plain of Shinar, there close to what would present day Baghdad, in that general area. And the reason that pride, we see this time and time again. They said, "Go to, let us build us a city," build us, notice that, a city, "and a tower, whose top may reach into heaven, and let us make us a name." Notice, It's all about me. You see that? Not one word about honoring God. Now this is a very short period of time, really, after the flood. And yet, they've already forgotten. They already forgotten about let us, let us, let us. They could do, they thought, do all things on their own. We can do this. They didn't seem to feel that they needed God whatsoever. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? It never really changes. This, of course, was open rebellion against God. It's independence of God. We don't need Him. Humility is often equated with trust and obedience. On the converse side of that, pride is related to independence and disobedience. A prideful person is not one who is going to obey. A prideful person says, I can do it on my own. It's the humble person who humbles himself before God, who realizes, I'm helpless. I need God. Here the people came together to strengthen themselves. It's always strength in numbers, isn't it? You put more and more together, and they think they control everything. And in pride, they made a reputation for themselves. They say, what? We need to do this or we'd be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. We see they're disobedient now because God had already given them a command to go out into the world and repopulate. This appears to be, again, in direct opposition to God's command. Man doesn't want to hear that, doesn't want to obey. So let's see what happens. We go into verse 5 and following. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence unto the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. And the Lord came down. This doesn't mean that the Lord actually had to come down and see what was going on. It was Moses' way here of saying, the Lord looked down, knowing what's going on, and to see that tower. He knows what's in their heart. He didn't have to come down here to see it. He knew. He didn't have to make a special trip. He knows what's going on. He knows their desire is to enhance their unity and strengthen themselves, and they had potential for even greater evil by this large number with one language. This is the Lord's evaluation. The people is one language, and they have all one language, and people is one, they all have one language, and this they begin to do. Now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Evil is going to get worse. You keep them together with one idea, in pride, with one language, they're going to continue on in this wicked way. They won't obey me, I'm going to do something about it, says God. So they would not obey Him in obedience to scatter all over the earth. So He did it for them in judgment. No doubt Shinar refers, I said, to the region of Babylon, because the passage culminates in the name like Babel, which sounds similar to the Hebrew verb confused. A lot of times if we could listen to it in the original language, there's a lot of word plays. Confuse their language, Babel. There's a program you can buy to learn a language now. It's called Babel. You get the phrase, he's babbling, when you can't understand something. That's where it comes from. In a written Babylonian accounts of the building of the city in Babylon, refer to the construction of these tall towers to God, by them to heaven, for the gods. as celestial cities. And it's an expression of pride. Now, these accounts say that they were made by the exact same process that's recorded here for us in chapter 11. These ziggurats were a step-like tower, so you could step up and walk like a circle around it. And they're believed to have been first erected in Babylon, and they were said to have their tops into heaven. It was this artificial mountain, if you would. They're trying to build their way to God. And it became the center of worship, pagan worship, demonic worship. It had a miniature temple that was built on the top of the tower, according to archaeological records. And Babylon took great pride in their building. They boasted in their city not only as being impregnable, but also as the heavenly city, literally the gate of God. And as we go into Babylonian history, if you look in Esther or any of the Daniel, any of the books that deal with that, that's what they thought of themselves. We're the gate of God. The account of Genesis is a view that the city has the predominant force of the world there. It's the epitome of ungodly powers in the world. It's the anti-kingdom, if you will. Everything is against God. Anytime you see that, I mention anti, that means counterfeit or against. So the record in these first 9 verses shows that God's absolute power in his swift justice. By the way, it is a righteous judgment. When God judges, it's always right. Now, there's a difference between judgment and chastisement, by the way. You will not be judged as a Christian. You will be chastised. As I like to say, God will take you to the woodshed and he will wear you out. But you're not judged. Judgment comes on the lost. The saved are just punished. Like a good father, he punishes his children. Here, this is judgment, and it's swift. What the people considered their greatest strength was unity. God swiftly destroyed that by confusing their language. I'll tell you what, doesn't that work? Have you go into a restaurant today, and a lot of times the person behind the counter doesn't speak English. And you're kind of confused as you're pointing, and of course Americans, and I guess the British, we're all the same. We believe everybody understands English, provided we speak it slowly and loudly enough. But they don't. And so there's confusion, and many times you go in, and when you get home, you don't have what you ordered. Because they thought you meant one thing when you meant something else. So their unity is now dissolved. Have you ever thought about that? What it must have been like. They're working on the tower, maybe they're going up to worship, and the Lord comes and he changes their language. And this fella's talking to this fella, and he doesn't understand why he can't understand him, and vice versa. And all of a sudden, how many different languages were spoken there that day? And I have, this is just my personal opinion. I believe God in his infinite wisdom, the families kept the same language. I really believe that. God would not want to break up families. But the little groups of the same language would come together and they would go somewhere because they couldn't understand anyone else. So in judgment, all of a sudden, they have a new language. So they go. What they didn't want to do, God forced them to do. What they considered their greatest fear, scattering. They didn't want to be through all the world. It came naturally on them. God scattered them all over the earth simply by changing their language. What they desired most, to make a name for themselves, ironically came to pass, for it became known as Babel. Like I said, even today, when people say something we don't understand, we think they're babbling. Then they stopped building the city. They scattered abroad all over. So the narrative actually provides a fitting conclusion for these events. It describes the families of the earth hopelessly scattered throughout the then known world, wandering out there. And think of what, if they would have obeyed God right away, They would have already been settled. They would have already had homes built, probably had farms started, all kind of things out there, family. And now they're starting from scratch. Now they're wandering. There was no need. There was no record here. You notice there's no mark of a record of a fugitive. No rainbow in the clouds. No ray of hope or token of grace here. So, think about it. God had promised the rainbow, no more floods. Cain had the mark of a fugitive on him. There's no hope here, is it? They've sinned against God. God has come down in judgment. They're going out into the world. It kind of leads you into something, doesn't it? You're looking for a solution. God has to have something in mind. What's coming on here? So after connecting genealogy, that solution provided, out of a scattered nation that God formed, one nation, one family now, is going to become his channel of blessing. So God's not done with the human race. It looks like he's fed up, but he's not. You remember, God has been dealing with the world. Adam and Eve were the world. During the dispensation of human conscience, he's dealing with the world. After the flood, human government, he's dealing with the world. We're getting ready to end another dispensation here shortly. The dispensation of promise. Now he's dealing with one family who's going to be a blessing to the world. So there's much more here than the account of what happened to the nations. If Moses wanted to trace the development of God's program, he could have done it straightforwardly. But his wordplays that he uses, the repetitions, the characterizations, the moralizations, all with the law, the Torah in mind here, an ethical standard, is to teach a lesson. There's a lesson here, not only for us, but especially for Israel. Israel was called out of Egypt to be God's theocracy. A theocracy is one who is led by God. That's what God's desire for Israel was to be. It wasn't long, though, after they were in the land, that they didn't want God to lead them anymore. They wanted to be like the other countries. Give us a king. Remember, God told them, when you have a king, he's going to take your sons, he's going to take your horses, he's going to take your cattle, you're going to pay taxes, and this, that, and the other. We want a king. Who do you want? Give us that tall, good-looking fella. He'll be fine. So they got Saul, who started out good and went downhill. They were designed to be a theocracy. Israel was to be established as a unified people of God and to be known all around the world. One simple requirement is given of them. Obey. That's the requirement. If they would do so, God would establish them firmly. But if they lifted their heads in pride and rebelled against God, they too would be scattered across the face of the earth. God's word doesn't change. It turned out that Israel followed the same disastrous course of the Babylonians. The theme of pride here then is important for us to pick up on. God puts down those who exalt themselves in pride. Scattering with its wars and its conflicts is better, though, than unified apostasy, falling away from the truth. God sends you into the world like that, it's better than living in apostasy. When Israel was scattered, yes, it's a judgment, but it's a blessing too, because they're out into the world where they will hear the gospel. Are there wars? Yes. Is it persecution? Yes. Is it hatred? Yes. Is the gospel being preached? Yes. God has a plan. God's plan will be accomplished, if not with man's obedience, then in spite of man's disobedience. Man's not going to stop God's plan. The undoing of Babel was cleverly explained in Zephaniah. whose terms certainly retrace the events, anticipating a great unification in the millennial kingdom, when everyone will speak one pure language and worship on God's holy mountain, being gathered from the nations into which they have been dispersed. Zephaniah 3, 9 through 11. He's speaking of the kingdom here. For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord to serve him with one consent. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my supplants, even the daughter of my dispersed, shall bring my offering. In that day shall they not be ashamed of all their doings, wherein they have transgressed against me. For then I will take away out of the midst of them that rejoice in thy pride, and thou shalt no more be haughty because of my holy mountain. One language again. God is going to reunite everything again. It's wonderful. The kingdom's wonderful, isn't it? You know, the miracle at Pentecost is just a harbinger of a yet future event. When Peter could preach and everyone heard in their own language. To me, that's always amazing. People say he spoke in tongues. Were they speaking in tongues, or did they hear in tongues? They heard in their own language. And then in the kingdom it says, one pure language. Verse 10 and following there's a long line here of people. And I'm not going to read those verses there. Here again, what I'm going to just give you the highlights of what goes on. This is a record that traces Noah's son Shem to Abram. Again, we're connecting the dots, and that's important. Earlier, Moses had traced the families of the earth that came from Noah's 3 sons, and he explained how in the world they ended up where they did. Here is a direct attention that's given to the descendants of Shem. Shem is a vertical genealogy designed to show a legitimate ancestry. This was often used in the ancient world to establish the authenticity or the authorization of a king, or the dynasty that he came from, leading back one king to another. So these verses show a straight line from Shem, who was blessed, to Abram, thus authenticating God's handing down the blessing to Abram. So this is what's important in these verses. So rather than have to stumble over all the words, all the names, well, this is the line of Israel. This is, we're following a line. What's the line we're following? Seed of the woman. We know it comes up through Noah. Now we know it's coming through Shem because we're going to Abram. And of course it's going to branch out from Abram through Isaac and Jacob, later through Judah, and then through Jesse, David, down to the Messiah. So that's why I'm just moving over that a little quickly here so we can get into the result of this line. The story of Abram begins here. The whole complexion of the Bible changes at this point, really. It's under the, he comes under Terah, his father. As noted earlier, what follows are particulars about the family of Terah. This is what became of Terah and his son Abram. It began when his father moved to Haran and continued to move on to Canaan by Abram later, who was the recipient of the promise. Terah's story is completed when Abram finally had a son who would carry forward the line of the blessing, which of course is a story and a journey in itself. Beginning in verse 27. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. and Haran begot Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abram and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife, Milah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Michal, and the father of Ishal. But Sarah was barren, she had no child. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarah his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came into Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Every time I read this, and I did put notes in here, but there's something that really always strikes me. It's see here that Terah took Abram's son and Lot and Sarah his daughter-in-law and his wife Mary. He took them from Ur of the Chaldees into the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran and they dwelt there. They stopped. They didn't go all the way. They stopped. He could have gone even. That's as far as he went. And this brief section gives us, the three sons. Abram's two brothers and their marriages. It also accounts for Lot. It gives us the reason that Lot's involved in the story. He's his nephew. And he figures prominently in the story of Abram. I would say that Terah was an idolater. He worshipped other gods. Joshua 24:2. And Joshua said unto all the people, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Your fathers dwelt on the other side of the flood in old time. Even Terah, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nahor, they served other gods. I want to tell you something. Abram, before his call, was as pagan as he could be. God saves sinners. If he didn't, we'd be in deep trouble. So perhaps the home of Terah was originally in Haran, I don't know. Many of his the ancestral names there are similar to places in their land. If so, the family had migrated about 600 miles to Ur over the years, where his younger son had been born and died. God's call to Abram in chapter 12, verse 1, initially came in Ur. And the family then moved back to Haran and settled there where his father died. Now, why did he stop? I've always been a question with me. That wasn't the promised land. Abram moved on to Canaan, where God appeared to confirm later the location. So we get into chapter 12. Here is where we get into the meat and potatoes of Genesis. We have seen so much. We have seen the creation. We've seen the fall of man. We've seen the first murder. We've seen the world that's become so bad that when God looked, he could only find one righteous man. He judged the world, the flood. Man comes off the ark. First thing, disobeys. We've seen a lot. And now God is taking a new step, a new dispensation here. Dispensation of promise is coming. And this narrative, the direction of the entire book of Genesis changes. This is the record of how God called Abram out of a pagan world. You know, how hard is that? You've witnessed to people. If you ever talked to someone who's involved in a cult, some false religion, how hard is it to get their attention? And yet, Abram comes out of that. He comes out of a pagan world. God makes some astounding promises to him. Promises that later he'd become part of it. Those promises become part of the formal Abrahamic covenant. The passage also points out something very important. The faith of Abraham. And it teaches that faith obeys God. Abram was middle-aged, prosperous, settled, and absolutely thoroughly pagan. That's a hard combination to work with. When you have someone who's prosperous, someone in their middle age, they're settling everything they're doing, and have their own worship system, that's a hard thing to defeat. The word of the Lord came to him. It's not known exactly how. It doesn't tell us if there was a theophany, a dream, or what. And he responded in faith. He's obedient to everything that the Lord asks. So this is actually the epitome of faith in the Bible. What shall we say then that Abraham our father, as pertaining to the flesh, hath found? For if Abraham was justified by works, he hath whereof to glory, but not before God. For what saith the Scripture? Abraham believed, and it was counted unto him for righteousness. There was an argument that somebody was in the other day on Facebook saying that it was works. For if Abraham were justified by works, he hath wherefore nothing to glory, not before God. Faith. That's what we're talking about here. Romans 4:16 through 24 talks about the faith there. The religious historical point of the passage certainly is the call of Abraham to a new nation. Israel would learn by this time that her very existence was God's work through a man who responded by faith and left for Canaan. It would be a message to convince Israel of the divine call that they were facing and the need of faith for their move from Egypt to Canaan. Faith. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, verse 1, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Here we go. It's the first mention of the covenant, isn't it? We'll be talking about this, and I'm going to repeat it over and over. Three parts of the Abrahamic covenant: land, seed, blessing. You will find that you will have the land, not Abraham, but his descendants, Israel. Seed, if you can count the sands on the beach or the stars in the sky, and blessing. Through you all nations on earth shall be blessed. Now, church, you don't get the land. Church, you are not new Israel, spiritual Israel. You're not Israel. You're not the seed. But you do get the best part of the blessing. Through you, all nations. That's the only part that's ours. Anybody except Jesus Christ, that's part of the covenant. So this records God's call. And then from 4 to 9, Abram's obedience. The call has two imperatives with subsequent promises that are attached. The first imperative was, Get thee out of thy country, from thy kindred, from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. That's hard. Wouldn't that be difficult? Abraham, I want you to leave the country. I want you to leave your family, get out of your father's house, and go to a land I'll show you. You notice one thing missing? Abram doesn't say, where? He doesn't ask, where are we going? The second imperative, thou shalt be a blessing. Now, his leaving, Abram's leaving, started a chain reaction. As we get into the Abrahamic covenant, it's literal, historical, grammatical. There's no strings attached. God doesn't say, I will if you will. It's unconditional. God says, I will. All you have to do is obey. God's going to do it. If Abram would get out of Ur, God would do three things for him, so that he could be a blessing in the land, the second imperative, and that he could be a blessing so that God would do three more things for him. The balance here shouldn't be missed. It strengthens the meaning as we go through this section. Abram's call had a purpose. His obedience would bring great blessing, not only to himself and to Sarai, but to us. 3 promises were based on God's call for Abram to leave his land, a great nation, a blessing, and a great name. A great nation, that's the seed. The land there, a blessing, great name, it's it. God is promising him, and I'll tell you what, God cannot lie. These promises are coming, they'll come true. It would enable him to be a blessing. Abram would be a blessing. Based on this obedience were God's 3 promises. Bless those who blessed him. That's still today, it hasn't changed. Bless Israel, God will bless you. Curse anyone that would treat him lightly or wrongly, still and today. And bless the families of the earth. Jesus Christ. To bless or curse Abram, by the way, was to bless or curse Abram's God. People miss that. You blaspheme Abram. It's God you're talking to. You curse him. You're cursing God. Unfortunately, God often had to use other nations to discipline his people because far from being a blessing to the world, they were, sadly, most of the time disobedient. Now, don't think I'm picking on Israel. The church can be just as bad. But we're staying in relation to what we're talking about here. The 3rd promise takes its greatest fulfillment in the fact that Jesus Christ became the means of the blessing for the entire world. Galatians 3:16. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. Romans 9:5. Whose are the fathers, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, Christ came, who is over all. God blessed forever. Amen. This, you see God's purpose now. He has pushed the line down. What does this mean for Abram? It means that he is going to be attacked and attacked and attacked by Satan. Satan now knows for a fact which line the Messiah is coming from. He knows. And he's going to follow that line, and he's going to do everything he can. As we follow Abram's life, we're going to see how the devil's working, trying to stop it. So the idea of faith is stressed in these passages. Faith, not works. Abram was told to leave several things, his country, his people, his father's house, but he was told nothing of the land that he was to go to. That's tough. That takes faith. His departure required an unparalleled act of faith. Faith, not works. Faith is demonstrated by obedience. Don't fall into this works for salvation business. No one is, how would you work for your salvation? Has anyone ever been good enough? How many good works would it take to erase one sin? And then, how would works erase that sin nature that separates you from God? And everyone's had that sin nature since the fall, with the exception of Jesus Christ. How would you erase it? And the themes of blessing and cursing are heightened here. The fact that the central passage right here of the book of Genesis, faith. Here begins the program that was so desperately needed in those first chapters. From what? The first chapters here, coming up through chapter 11. This was needed. A blessing was needed. Because we see that man over and over and over again failed. This was the call. Abram responded by faith. And what Abram did were works of faith, not works for salvation. What he did out of his faith and belief in God. The ensuing promises are going to come to the forefront a little later as we really get into the Abrahamic covenant and the covenant conditions over in chapter 15. But I'm going to have to stop and pick up at verse 4, Lord willing, next week, because I'll never, with 5 minutes, I won't even get the passage read. So we'll stop there.